Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Good afternoon, friends. Welcome to the session of prototype. Friends, many people understood prototype in a different ways. Today, we'll discuss what is exactly the prototype, when to use the prototype, how to use the prototype. On top of that, what are the different approaches available for the prototype, and how this will be useful for the end solutions or building the end product. So with this approach, we'll come to know that prototype is a kind of the miniature version of the end product. But before that, we need to understand how the prototype can be built. And for that purpose, slightly we need to go towards the ideation stage. So if you look towards the strategic stage or the ideation stage, we'll take one example for that. Consider if you have to do phishing. So you being a science student, you being a technocrat, if you want to do the phishing, definitely being a science student or the technocrat, you may feel that for the fast result, I may use some technical resources, some technologies for the phishing. And for that purpose, you may use many different resources who have come from the technology areas. But this is not a right approach every time, friends. For that purpose, what we have to do is, we have to just focus on the exact nitty-gritty, exact requirement of the phishing. So what is the exact requirement? The requirement is that the fish need food. And for that purpose, we need to use only two approaches. One is the food, and the next one is the thread which has been tied with the food. And for that, with this approach, if we do the phishing, definitely we'll get better result instead of the previous one, that is the use of the other technological areas and all. So this is the basic approach. So with this approach, the food and the thread is the basic prototyping approach, I would say. So this approach is very much important for any kind of an end solutions. So with this, we'll come to know what is exactly the prototype from the definition point of view. So friends, a prototype is an early version or maybe a sample of a product or a service that is used to test the final product or used to test the end concept or the solution or the end process. It is like a mini working model or the sample that's created before the final product release. So whenever we focus on the product development, whenever we focus on the solutions, we make sure that we can create one miniature version of the end product or the end solution. And for that purpose, whatever the miniature version or the sample version we create, that is called as a prototype. So as I said at the start of our discussion, that prototype is been understood by many people with the different names. So there are some different names, obviously. So what are those different names? The names are like design, it can be called as a rough trial or the trial, it can be called as a beta version of the product, alpha version of the product. Some says the test version, some says a mock-up, some says the working model, some says the pilot product, some says the, I would say, wireframing also. So these are the various names associated with the prototype. So as per everyone's comfort, they use such type of terminology. So if you ask me the exact introduction of the prototype, it is a kind of a dummy version of the product. So it is a basic form of a prototype maybe starting with the paper prototype, it can be used with the digital prototyping, and this can be in form of sketch, this can be in form of diagrams, this can be in form of a cardboard model also, or this can be in form of a clay model also, if it isn't physical in nature. So this is just a small introduction I just wanted to convey to you. If you remember, friends, in your childhood days, when you have been, if someone asks you to make one aeroplane, what you used to do? You used to take one paper, you used to prepare, you used to make sure that the paper can be converted into an aeroplane, and you then you use that paper design or that design ergonomics so that the paper can fly. because of the various aerodynamics principle you applied to the paper aeroplane easily able to build it. Paper based aeroplane was the first prototype based on the aerodynamic principle of the aeroplane. So consider this one small example as a part of the introduction also. Now, moving ahead, prototyping is actually a next stage of the ideation in design thinking process. So whatever the process you think from the design point of view. So at that point, you need to think on the various resources available for the end solution, and for that purpose, whatever the bare minimum resources you think about for the initial development, this can be considered as a prototype. Having a prototype at initial stage is the best way to realize how end solution shall look like or work. In prototype, when you pare down your ideas and go deep down with scientific or the logical thinking, and you make ready to design early version of the solution, or I would say this, with the help of this approach, it will help you to understand the risk, to learn from the failures very quickly, because when you make any device or the final end product, and at that time if you come across with any kind of an revisions, so this can also be considered as a failure, and this may be a very costly and time consuming. So it is better to have the miniature version, working sample of the end product, and at that time if you get some failures or if you get some revisions, it will save your you as a technocrat, it will save your money as well as time both. So with this concept, now we'll move ahead for the next part of our session, that is called types of prototype. Consider, dear friends, if you built one end product or the end solution, and at that time if you come across some revisions or any failures during the working model, so this will cost you a lot. This revision itself will be a very time consuming in nature also. So it is always better to have the working miniature model or the sample model, which is called as a prototype, at early stage only. So this will not only save your time, but it will save your money also. Now we come to know that what is exactly prototype, what is the significance of prototype. Now moving ahead, we'll come to know. So having a prototype at initial stage is the best way to realize how end solution shall looks like or work. So in prototype, you pare down your ideas and go deep down with scientific or the logical thinking. You make ready to design early version of the solutions. This will not only help you to understand the risk and learn from the failures quickly, but it will also save your money and time both. I'll give one example for that. Friends, consider if you are building one product, and while building the product, you come to know that there are some revisions at the last stage of the product. So at that time, this will not only cost you a lot, but it will consume your time also. So it is always better to have the miniature version of the end product initially. By doing this, you will not only save the money, but you will save the overall production time also. So that's why the prototype is very much important at initial stage. Now, moving ahead, dear friends, we need to understand what are the different types of prototype. We know that prototype is important at initial stage, but again, while working on the prototype, again it has a two type. First one, low fidelity prototype. Next one is a high fidelity prototype. When we talk about low fidelity prototype, it works out on a primary and core element of the solution requirements for visualization purpose. It is always easy and take less time to make. I'll give one example for that. The best example is the drawing or the digital copy. Consider, friends, you have been asked to work on the car building or car manufacturing. So you being a science student, you being an engineer, you being a technocrat, you directly cannot go on a floor of the car manufacturing. You cannot directly go to the manufacturing setup of the car. But before that, what you will be doing? You will be doing some sketches of the car which you would like to design and manufacture. So that sketch is nothing but the low fidelity part of the prototype. So based on that exact scientific sketches, based on the exact digital copy of that sketches is considered as a low fidelity prototype. On a flip side, now when you move ahead and you would like to work on the exact scientific model of the car, which is nearer to the end working model of the product. So at that time, this category, which is comparatively advanced than the lower fidelity, this category is called as a high fidelity prototype. So it works closer to the actual end solution. It involves more compelling and intense testing also, because in low fidelity you just work on the visualization part of the product. You did not had any testing in that type of the prototype. In high fidelity, you have to work on the various intense testing also, so that this will help you to get the confidence on how end solution shall respond or work other than just an visualization. It takes a bit more time to create, but trust me friends, this is the best way to work on the high fidelity prototype, because this will not only, as I said, this will not only save your time and money, but it will give you the confidence to work and move towards the end product or the end solutions. So these are the various types of the prototype. Moving ahead, we need to understand, while working on the various types of prototype, whether it is a low fidelity prototype, whether it is high fidelity prototype, there are some methods also which we being an engineering student, we being an science student, we being an technocrat need to understand. The very first and the popular prototyping method is called as a storyboarding. So when you are working on the end solution or the end service or the end product, you do some storyboarding also, that what are the different elements involved in the end product, what are the different elements or the features involved in the end solution and the end processes. So for that purpose, you jot down all those features and the elements on a same canvas or a paper. So that is what we call as a storyboarding. Along with that features and the elements, you put some do's and don'ts also. So it will give an entire conceptual understanding in form of a story. So that is called as the storyboarding approach for the prototype, or storyboarding method for the prototype. Similarly, if you are working on some, let us say app, let us say Android or the iOS app, so for that purpose, or maybe if you are working on some software, so instead of directly building the software or the app, you being a science student, you must adopt the wireframing method. So what is wireframing? Wireframing is such a kind of an simulator or mock-up kind of a platform wherein you do some sketching related to your software or the app, and based on that sketching, you start working on the various activities and the events of that software or the app which you would like to use as an end product. Similarly, there is a third method in the prototyping, that is called as a paper prototyping, which is quite common, as everyone knows. I just spoke about one car example. Before the actual manufacturing, you work on the design of the car and you do some sketching on a paper for that car, that how the car shall looks like, whether it should be in a SUV manner, whether it is in hatchback manner, whether it is in a cargo manner or a off-road manner or on-road manner. So you do all those sketching on a paper. So that's why this method is called as a paper prototype. Similarly, when you go to the deep dive of this prototype, you work in the lab also. So when you work in the lab along with various intense testing, various iterations of the prototyping, so that prototyping method is also called as a lab prototype. Some students, some science student, some technocrat also call this lab prototype as a proof of concept or the MVP, that is minimal viable product, because they are doing lots of testing and the simulations on those lab prototyping model, and that's why it is also called as a MVP, that is a minimal viable product. Now, moving ahead, in case of the prototyping method, you build to test for the ease of the use. This is very much important, dear friends. When you work on the various working possibilities of the end solutions, you have to work on the various testings also, some validations also. These all methods will help you to build the end solution or the end product with the help of this testing and validation approaches with the help of various methods of this prototype. Now, moving ahead, I'll give one example. Whatever we spoke about this prototype methods, the various nitty-gritties, various elements of this prototype, we'll take one example. Dear friends, consider you have been given one task that you have to design or build one vehicle that can carry minimum 1 to maximum 5 people. So what you will do? Definitely, you will approach with this kind of an method. Initially, you will think about the wheel, because vehicle always has a wheel. On top of that, you add the wheels, you add the proper structure for the wheel, then you create the outer body along with the engines, and then you may be working for the end product, that is a vehicle. So this is the approach generally we use, isn't it? But friends, do you really feel that this is a right approach to work for the end product? This is a right approach to work with the various methods of the prototyping? There is a catch over here. So what is the catch? So the catch is, in case of the normal approach, you may go ahead with the wheel design, then the wheel structure, then the body and the engine structure, and then the overall vehicle. But this is not a best suitable approach to work on the high fidelity of the prototype, or this is not a best approach comparatively to think for the MVP type of approach. So what is the approach then? So the approach is very simple. Remember friend, what was the question? The question was, design or build a vehicle that can carry 1 to maximum 5 people. So for that purpose, in an initial approach, we just think about how I can build a car who can carry 1 passenger also, or 1 person also, and maximum 5 people also. So you being an science student, you being an engineering student, or maybe you being an technocrat, you just need to understand, can I make a miniature model who can carry at least 1 person from one side, one point to the another point? So this is what I called the first prototyping approach. So that's why what I can do, I being an science student, I will work on the skates. So if I make a skate, then I'll come to know that, okay, this skate can carry the respective weight of 1 person. And by doing this, what other elements I come to know? I come to know about the various other aerodynamic points also, gravitational points also, which I have never considered in the previous approach. With this new approach, once I come to know that I can able to build skates, then what are the next feature I can add on? I can add on the handle to this skate. Now I have added the handle. Now being a science student, I can think that, okay, I have added the handle, I have the skates with the two wheels. Now I need some sitting portion for the person. So that's why I have built one next revision of the prototype, that is called as a cycle or the bicycle. Now this bicycle is also one prototype, because this bicycle is carrying 1 person or maximum 2 person if it has a carriages. Now, but this prototype has some limitation. What is the limitation? The speed, the early traction. So for that purpose, the next version of my prototype should be to build a bike or the scooter who can carry 2 people with the speed. Now, till time I come to know the various aerodynamic principles, various gravitational angles. I have achieved a good speed for my vehicle also, and I am obviously, as per the problem statement, this prototype can able to carry 2 person from one side to the another side. But still, I have not achieved the end product, because as per the initial question, the question was build a vehicle that can carry 1 to 5 people, and this 4th stage of the prototype is carrying hardly 2 people, though we have achieved the speed and the other gravitational part, but hardly 2 people I can able to carry. So for that purpose, next phase of my prototype should be the miniature version of the car. So that is what I call the exact suitable approach for the prototyping. with the high fidelity, because in this entire approach you do lots of intense testing, validation, iteration, learnings, research, lots of things. So you being a science student, you should think with such type of approach, which is comparatively best suitable approach being a technocrat, being a science student. Now, I hope you have understood about all these prototyping approaches. I'll give one more example. Similar to vehicle, take an example of a ship also. Suppose if someone, if your friends or if your teacher ask you that build one ship or build a prototype of the ship that can carry multiple passenger from one side to the another. So initially, you being a science student, what you can do? You can use the various materials and you can build one prototype who can carry at least one passenger or the one person from one side to the another side. Similarly, you increase the capacity of that ship, then again you increase the capacity and you work on some aerodynamics also, because in a sea or the river, aerodynamics, the flow of the air also matter. So accordingly you work on the other areas of those prototype also. So this is the right approach to work for the various prototyping. Now, moving ahead, whatever we discuss about the high fidelity, low fidelity, if you see at a nutshell, I can segregate this all approaches in a major 4 parts. The first part is we have to build. Next part is we have to measure. Whatever we have built, whatever we have conceptualized, we have to take the measurements also. We have to make the scalings also. Now, based on those scaling, we have to learn whether any revision is available in that, whether any failure is in that, and if you have any revision or the failure, based on those revision and the assumptions, we again rebuild it. So if you see this triangle, friends, you have to start with the build. Next, you have to continuously measure it, then focus on the learnings, and then again you build it. So build, measure, learn is the best prototyping or the MVP approach to go ahead for the any end solution or any end product. So this approach you must need to consider. On top of that, as a engineering fellow or as a science student, I would say, whenever you do prototyping at early stage, it always save your money. If you see the first graph, left side graph, you will come to know that when you do the prototyping, it will always save your money as well as time both. Wherein in other side, when you do or launch the product, so at that time it gives some risk factor and you have to work on the various cycles also. So it is always better to use the various prototyping cycles. The more prototyping cycle you follow, the less cost and the money will be involved in that one. Because initially you have done lots of revisions and iteration, and this will be helpful for you to make a better, viable and robust end solution or the end product. This chart explains the various prototype cycles whenever you follow. Now, there are 2 macros also which we need to consider. What is exactly the prototype? At the time of prototyping, what are the different things we need to consider and what are the different things we should not have to consider? So that is also very much important. So it is like a do or don'ts. So we'll try to understand what are the do's of the prototype, what are the don'ts of the prototype. So dear friends, prototype is designed to change the world. Remember this. Prototype is not about getting profit. So this is a very basic fundamental we being a science student need to understand. Prototype is always considered as a design to change the world with the end solution. But that means that prototype is certainly not about getting profit immediately. This is first. Second one is it's supposed to solve the real problem. When you make the solution, when you work on the prototype, you need to supposed to work to solve the real problem. On a flip side, it also means that prototype is not to design to impress the end user. Because in prototype, your focus should be to solve the real problem. Your focus should not your focus should not tilt towards the impression of the user. So this is a second important element of the prototyping. Third prototyping element is it used to build to learn and get the feedback from the user. I repeat, the prototype is used to build and learn and to get the feedback from the users. That means prototype is certainly not supposed to behave like an end product or to produce like an end product, because you are working on the prototype to get some feedback from the users. It is kind of a testimonial also. So you should not consider this prototype as an end product. And the last point, which is also very much important, dear friends, is prototype is minimal than you think. Never consider that whatever the prototype you built, it is the final product. It is very minimal thing than you think. And that's why on a flip side, you should not think that you have carved the stone. You have done the ultimate research. You should not think that building a prototype, that means you have built or you have developed some research, you have worked on some research. No friends, this is consider that whatever the thing you have done in a prototyping stage, that is very minimal than you think. So these major 4 elements, we being an student, we being an technocrat, need to understand, friends. Now, along with that, I'll give one small reference so that before we end the session, you will come to know that there is one technology meter also. So what is that technology meter? So this technology meter starts with major 9 pointers. This technology meter is also TRL. In domain, that stands for that technology readiness level. So in this technology meter or meter, prototyping, the prototype fall to the 5th stage. Generally, for high fidelity, the prototyping fall in 4th stage to 5th stage. Low fidelity, you can consider as a 3rd stage and 4th stage. This is what we discuss about prototyping in low fidelity and high fidelity, which lies in between 3rd stage to the 4th stage. So technology readiness level, which I was discussing with you, it is a kind of an approach to assess the maturity of the particular technology, the maturity of the particular end solution, or the maturity of a particular end product. It enables innovators, researchers, analysts, and the stakeholders to evaluate the feasibility and validity of adopting in a new technology. So at a nutshell, in a concluding remark, I would say technology meter fall in major 3 parts. First one is ideation, next one is the development stage, that is the prototyping and developing both, and the last one is the actual deployment. So with this, dear friends, I hope you understood what is meant by prototype, you understood what are the different types of the prototype, when to use the prototype, what are the significance of prototype, and most important, how to use the various approaches of the prototype. I repeat, dear friends, I gave one example of the car as well as the ship. You just focus on those examples. It will not only help you to understand the prototype, but in the long run, with the help of such example, you will be able to actually build a good solution for our nation. Thank you, friends.